House Republicans today voted to kick almost 4 million people off of food stamps next year and nearly 3 million people each year over the next decade.
On this vote, the yeas are 217, the nays are 210. The bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table.
Righteous boos raining down appropriately because Republicans did this by slashing almost $40 billion from the food stamp program over 10 years. Mind you, this is at a time when nearly 47 million Americans are living in poverty, a statistic that is even more striking when you consider that equates to 1 in 7 people in this country. Food stamps play a crucial role in helping lift Americans out of poverty. In 2011, it kept almost 5 million people above the poverty line. What happened today is beyond shameless, and here's what makes it worse. Back in July, House Republicans did this unprecedented thing. They broke away from 40 years of congressional tradition and cleaved the food stamp funding from the Farm Bill because that bill would have only cut $20 billion from the program, half as much as they wanted to cut. In other words, they felt they weren't screwing poor people enough. But at the same time, they wanted to make sure they got the Farm Bill passed because they so desperately wanted to stuff money in the pockets of recipients of farm subsidies, which is somewhere between $15 and $35 billion annually. Some of the recipients of those subsidies are members of Congress themselves, like Republican Representative Steve Fincher from Tennessee, who has received almost $3.5 million in farm subsidies between 1995 and 2012. So to quickly summarize here, House Republicans hacked off all the poor people from the Farm Bill, gave them their own special vote, which is what happened today, so that they could preserve corporate welfare. And some of those yes votes today came from Stephen Fincher, who I just mentioned, and Republican Steve King from Iowa, who California's Jackie Spear alluded to on the House floor as someone who was recently given $3,500 for food and lodging allowance during a 6-day trip to Russia.
That particular member has 21,000 food stamp recipients in his district. One of those people who is on food stamps could live a year on what this congressman spent on food and lodging for 6 days.
Oh, and one more. This guy, Congressman Phil Gingrey, a Republican from Georgia, who, according to the National Review, was caught in a closed-door meeting whining that his staff can eventually move on and get rich, working as lobbyists while, quote, I'm stuck here making $172,000. Hey, Congressman, you think you're hurting now? Try food stamps. Joining me now is Congressman Dan Kildee, Democrat from Michigan. In June, he proposed an amendment to the Farm Bill that would have helped SNAP recipients maximize their benefits. Is this rock bottom, Congressman?
You know, I've not ever seen anything like it. I've only been in Congress 9 months, but I've been in government my whole life. This is a new low. You know, instead of, dealing with where we're bloated, instead of taking on big tax breaks for corporations to balance our budget, or making sure that we have a Buffett rule where everybody pays their fair share, the Republicans decided that they're going to take food out of the mouths of the hungry in order to satisfy their ideological goals. It's a shame.
Okay,
and it's mean.
I'm going to give you the arguments that I saw Republicans, conservatives making today. First of all, what are you talking about? It's America. No one's really hungry, A. B, we are just trying to make this program work better, be more efficient, and we are pushing work requirements because we believe that people should work. We don't want the lazy, indolent folks lying around living off government largesse. What do you say to those arguments?
Well, first of all, they should get out of their offices and come to the communities that I represent. If they want to see people that are hungry, come to Flint, come to Saginaw. I talk to them every single day, number one. And secondly, they talk about a work program. If they were serious about wanting people to have an alternative to being poor and have a job, they'd work to create jobs in this country. They'd have an infrastructure bill that would put people to work rebuilding this country, building schools and bridges and roads. This is just, all this is an effort on the part of the few who have control and power to make sure that they continue to keep their big tax breaks, offshore their profits. And who do they have paying for it? Who do they pick to pay for these big tax breaks for the wealthiest people in this country? The poor. It's a shame. They ought to be, honestly, they ought to be ashamed of themselves. This is mean. It's not just politics. It's not just policy. It's outright cruelty.
Will you do me a favor, Congressman, and explain to folks, it's a little wonky, but I think it's an important point here. Part of what the Republicans did today was get rid of the waiver program. And the waiver program was basically there are certain eligibility requirements. If you don't have a kid and you're out of work, there's certain fairly tight eligibility requirements of whether you can get food stamps or not. But in areas with elevated levels of unemployment, like I would imagine the district that you represent in the great state of Michigan, the state could waive those eligibility requirements. Am I right? And that's
right.
what they got rid of today. What is the thinking there?
You know, they just don't understand what it's like to be poor in America. And if you don't have a job and no prospect of a job, you have to be able to feed yourself. Until we can get an economy moving that puts people back to work, what are these folks supposed to do? I mean, it's just beyond my comprehension that they can't just spend a little bit of time talking to real people in Flint, Saginaw, or any district in America. There are poor people. For some reason, they just don't know these folks. They just don't understand
You're
them.
telling me the constituents of your district in Michigan aren't choosing to not work so that they can collect, you know, $1.40 per meal on SNAP.
It's the biggest myth that you continue to hear Republicans try to sell us, that the folks out there who are on food stamps, they want it that way. They like it. Look, since I took the food stamp challenge, I have talked to hundreds of people who have come to me and said, you know, thank you for doing that because I never told anybody, but, you know, I was on food stamps. This is a situation where real people who are literally living from paycheck to paycheck or meal to meal will have that food taken away from them because of a heartless, cruel Congress more concerned about patting themselves on the back for cutting the budget with no consideration whatsoever for what it means in human terms. They honestly ought to be ashamed of themselves. I don't know. I just don't know how they look at themselves in the mirror after doing this. Some things are political. This was just plain wrong. It's mean and it's wrong.
Congressman Dan Kildee of Michigan, thank you so much.